All right, we are here with Landry Burdine. Landry, you are one of the most familiar faces on the TCU. Well, maybe not faces, one of the most familiar voices to TCU fans. You've been doing the sideline commentary now for how long for TCU?
This upcoming season will be my 10th year, which is really hard to believe. It's flown by. So my first season was I got thrown into the fire by Estridge against LSU when we played them at Cowboys Stadium, and just really haven't looked back. It's been a fun ride. Kind of learn a whole new business, has been an interesting thing for me. So, 10 years. I'm getting old. My kids have grown up. I literally have watched my kids grow up while I've been doing this radio gig. So appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, well, I think we've all been kind of watching your kids grow up over this last 10 years too. I think everybody knows the twins now pretty well. It has some familiarity. We'll get to that in a little bit. Before we talk about your journey to the sideline as a broadcaster, you spent some time on the sideline as a player too. You were a captain for the Sun Bowl, right? TCU's first bowl reappearance in several years back in 1998, which makes us contemporaries at TCU. So we won't talk about how old either of us are
today.
That's
right.
Don't worry about that. Can you tell us just, there's amazing stories and long forms on that team and that journey, but can you just talk about, your playing days and playing for Patterson as a young defensive coordinator and why you wanted to stay so connected to TCU after your time on the field ended?
Yeah, that team was a unique group of men, and you were around a lot of them, obviously during that time too. But I think through adversity, it develops a lot of character, and that goes for a lot of things in life too. But that team had been through a tremendous amount of adversity the year prior, where we won one game, and it was just miserable, right? I mean, the Pat Sullivan, the late great Pat Sullivan, was such a great mentor and a great man, but his staff was pretty dysfunctional at that point. You could tell that they were really starting to feel the heat, and so there was a lot of tension. There was fights every day at practice, a lot of times between the coaches, which was really interesting, and it just wasn't a lot of fun. And then enter Fran and Gary and their staff, which now Tom Erdahl, who's back at TCU, was on that staff, and the staff was completely different. The methodology was completely different, and it was all new and fresh and kind of fun and kind of like what we're experiencing now on campus, right? And so there was initially, I think, some hesitation with the team until the trust was built up, and then there was complete buy-in. And there was great effort every day in practice. There was great camaraderie in the locker room. And that's something I can still say to this day. It's still a very close-knit group of guys. And, I'm just thankful for whatever small role I had in it. I was not a great player by any means. And I don't ever want anybody to think that I think otherwise. I was one of those guys that kind of, when I got to campus in 95, I wanted to just see the field. That was my initial goal. Just get on the field. Right. And then it just progressed. I was really more of a special teams guy. I got to start a couple of games, but on a 1-10 team, that's not saying a whole lot. So, it just getting to go out on top the way we did in the Sun Bowl, honestly, is something I'll cherish forever. And then the fact that I was picked as a captain by my peers, still to this day, is the greatest honor I've ever had. And I'll never forget it. I got a scholarship. That was a great one, but man, getting named captain by your teammates, there's just nothing better. And so that team is special, and it's special. It should be really special to everybody around TCU because the program never looked back after that game.
I remember being home, during finals week and watching that game on TV on my landline, talking to friends about, because we'd all lived through that 1-10 season and tearing down the goalposts for beating SMU at the end of the year. I mean, that was my freshman year of college. So that team is for sure, like, that was what the moment I fell in love with TCU. I mean, that really was it in TCU football. So I think a lot of people probably feel that way that are contemporaries to us old folks here. So what brought you back to getting involved in TCU? You graduated, went off, started your career, all of those types of things happen. And then how did you end up back on the sidelines as a part of the TCU broadcast team?
It's really interesting. So I got a call from Estridge, Brian Estridge, and he said, "Hey, I want you to think about doing this." Jeff Williams was leaving. He had kind of done, I think he had done 10 years on the sidelines with them. And Estridge was just like, "Hey, this is something I really think that you could do and be good at." And he said, "I really want a guy that had played in that defense that could talk about it, because Gary's defense it has its own little idiosyncrasies and things. And so he's like, I want a guy that can do that, but I also want a guy that can handle Gary, right? And as you know, I mean, God love him, he can be a lot, and but he and I were really close, really close. And I had moved him into his first house, and he lived below my wife and I when we got married. He was at our wedding, and so I mean, it was an easy transition for me. I'd been out of it, I guess, for if you really think about it, for about Melissa, 12, 13 years. And so I get that call, and it's funny because my daughter was, 4 maybe, and the twins were 2. And so I told Esther, I was like, "Listen, Bub, I appreciate it, but no, I think my wife would kill me if I were gone every weekend right now. There's just too much going on." So I go home, and I'm talking to my wife of now 21 years, and just kind of tell her in passing, "Hey, you're not going to believe the call I got today." And she said, "Well, what did you tell him?" I said, "Well, I told him no, I didn't think you would want me to do it. Not to make her the bad guy, right? But I was just trying to preempt that." And she goes, "You're an idiot. You would love that. It would be really good for you. It'd be a good outlet." And call him back, So I called him back, and I said, "Hey, is that job still up?" And he said, "Yeah." And then the rest is history. So no formal training at all. The first time I ever even saw a script or a pregame or anything was on the sidelines of the LSU game. And I'll never forget the very first time I went on the air. I start to do a little segment on, I can't even remember what it was. And they got guys talking in my ear, right? They're telling me to, so I stopped talking, and like a complete idiot on the radio, I stopped talking. And of course, Esther is like, "Hey, you can't do that," And from there, we just took off. And so it's easy. Estrogen didn't make it easy, right? They're true pros. And so my job on the sidelines is very easy. Call the play, see what happens, say a little something funny about it every now and then, and have a lot of fun. So I've really enjoyed it. It's been a really fun process.
I think when you have a crew that's as good as you guys are, and I can say that with no hesitation because you guys have won multiple awards. You've been named best broadcasting team in Texas. I mean, nationally, the respect for what you guys do is there for sure. But a lot of people don't realize how much preparation goes into it. I mean, they think you're just having a conversation on the sideline. That going into a game, and it's a huge game. It's at AT&T Stadium. It's against LSU, an SEC program. That first time they throw to you, what was that feeling like?
Well, I was fortunate because I got to do some of the pregame shows, so I got to get some of the jitters out. And it wasn't. I honestly thought I would be more panicked than I was. The interesting thing was I had people listening, and my wife was one of those that she said, "Look, if you're not any good at this, I'm going to tell you." It's one of those things where you're like, "Ugh," that's not your thing, And so after the game, she said, "I thought it was great," and I had some other buddies that kind of built me up and kind of leaned into me and like, "Hey, man, you can do this," And so that was good for me. The prep's the easy part. I watch film. I usually will. They give us access to the same film that the team gets and all the cut ups and everything. And I usually will set aside some time on Thursday and watch film, both of TCU and the opponent. And then, really Thursday night and Friday is spent with just some game planning and kind of, general idea what's going on. And for me, the beauty of it was with Gary, the defense hadn't changed since I was there. I mean, the calls were the same, the method was the same. And so that made it a pretty easy transition for me.
I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Do you have 2 or 3 games that kind of stand out of just memorable? I mean, I think we can all guess probably number one, but just moments that were especially special for you, over the course of this 10-year career now.
Yeah, there's a few, and all for different reasons, right? So the Alamo Bowl obviously was amazing. Baylor, when that's the coldest I've ever been in my life. The rain game, it was
2018, right?
I'm sure it was 40 degrees. It felt like it was 20. And so that one stands out a lot too. The utter domination in the Peach Bowl was just so much fun to watch and be a part of. But then I also go back to Oklahoma when Gary cussed at me at halftime. I remember that. It was so funny. I said, coach, your thoughts on the first half. And, he said one word and it rhymed with pity, and it was just hilarious. We were up for an emergency break on the ticket that week. And, I was actually left there to go elk hunting with a buddy of mine, Cody Slinkard, that played safety with me at TCU. And we got into town and got service, and my phone's just blowing up. I mean, everybody's like, hey, you're up for an e-break this week. And so that one stands out too. But yeah, I would say probably during my time, because I came in right after the Rose Bowl. It would be, Alamo Bowl, Peach Bowl, and that Baylor win. And honestly, winning the Big 12, beating Iowa State the way that we did that year was really special. And being on the field for that was really cool. And, the next week aside, that was a really special time on campus.
I stand by that 2014 season during the Paul Dawson pick six is the loudest I've ever heard the Carter.
Yeah.
I mean, that moment was, that whole season was so great, but that to me was the loudest I've ever heard that stadium. And I missed was it the Utah game in 2009? I think
that's the one I was going to say.
Yeah. That might be the one that would be comparable to it. But for me personally in the stands, that's the loudest I've ever heard it. How do you separate, being a person who played at TCU, being a person who has that great relationship with Gary? How do you separate kind of you as a TCU fan, someone who's invested in the university, invested in the coaching staff and the players, from you, the professional broadcaster? Or do you allow yourself to be a little bit, let a little bit of that purple kind of shine through?
Yeah, I think you have to, just to be genuine. I think people want to hear, candor in what I'm providing. I mean, Estrogen didn't have to be a little more down the middle. I mean, they do obviously lean purple in the broadcast, as they should. But, for me, there have been times where, and Estrogen has dialed me back too. He's like, hey, man, let's make sure that we, are a little more objective about this. But, there have been times where an exciting play, I'll be going nuts on the headset, or, I like, the Max was in, Max was out debate. I mean, I took that picture immediately of his footprint, and I was, it's okay for me to tweet that out and to have a little fun with it. And so I think I can lean a little more towards that. It's hard. It really is hard because it just runs in your blood, and, you want it so bad, and all those, emotions come up. But yeah, you just dial it back. And a lot of what we do in pregame is kind of pre-planned out. So that's kind of easy. But, the last few years too, if you listen, I especially was pretty hard on some of the things that were going on because I felt like that would be disingenuous to not be, because I saw some things that were concerning, or, the offensive line wasn't playing well, or the defense was obviously not playing well the last couple of years. And so I was like, man, I can try to sugarcoat this, but there's nothing genuine about that, and nobody's going to want to hear that. And so, I try to tell you what I'm seeing, and I just, right or wrong, I kind of figure that's the best way to go about it.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely, it's a really hard line to walk when you care about the thing that you're covering. But, I think you guys do such a great job with that. And I think you're right. I think people want to hear the former player talk like a guy who has been part of the program. I think that's what separates you guys from some of the other callers and different groups that call in other games across the country. Let's talk a little bit about this last 6 months. Obviously the program went through downtimes that we hadn't really seen. Gary gets shown the door, mutually parting of ways, however we want to call that, in October. That moment for you, again, as somebody who was there when he started, who was a part of that, who's been tied into that program, that has a relationship with Coach B that most of us will never, be able to share. What was that like for you? And how did you come back for that next game, that Baylor game, without kind of maybe letting some of those emotions come through?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was hard. It really was hard. I mean, I knew it was coming. You could sense it, and all good things come to an end. It's the way it goes. Circle of life, and however else you want to look at it. But once it was after Kansas State game, when the ultimate decision was finally made, there was a little kind of period of mourning for me. It was like, wow, that's kind of the end of an era, and one that I was a part of. And so, I love Gary and everything that he had contributed to the program. And so, you know, when you have those kind of relationships, you obviously feel that. And I think at the same time, you can also say, you know, it's probably time, right? I mean, it's time, and it's time for us to turn the page as a program, because the program has to be bigger than any one coach or any one person. And we've reached that status now. And so, you know, there was, after a couple of days, I kind of found myself excited. And then you go into the Baylor game and you see the spirit that those guys played with and the camaraderie amongst the coaches. And, you know, this isn't a knock on Gary or anything, but I saw coaches that previously had kind of not been able to collaborate doing that. And it was really refreshing to see. So yeah, it very hard, but probably necessary at the same time.
You've been around a little bit of spring ball. You've obviously had an opportunity, I'm sure, to chat with Sonny and some of the new guys and see some familiar faces with Tom Riddall coming back. What are your early impressions as someone who, you know, again, has that really unique perspective on the program of this new staff, and what are you most looking forward to for the fall?
A lot, you know, so I've been out to a couple of practices, and you know, you hear it and you can kind of feel it on Twitter, the vibe, right? And so I walk out to practice, and this was a week ago Saturday, and there's 300 people out there. I mean, I can't imagine. I stopped counting. There was so many people out there, and the music had changed, right? They're playing, you know, hip hop, and they're, you know, there's just a completely different vibe than what. I mean, it would be like, I don't even know how to describe it. It'd be like, you know, what I would think maybe going out with someone for 20 years, and then all of a sudden you change, and it's just new and different and fresh and exciting. And so
you had to throw in the dating reference in honor of Gary, right?
I mean, I was shocked. I was genuinely shocked. It was unnerving for a minute. And I see Matty Lou and some of the other guys that have been around for a long time. Matt Lewis, you know, who's was an equipment manager, and then, you know, one of the associate ADs, and he looks at me and was like, "Did you ever think?" I'm like, "Man, I'm still kind of soaking all this in." So I was really impressed with their pace of practice. That's something that you know, practice should always be harder than the game, and so you always kind of look at how are they moving, how's the pace, is it real frenetic, is it chaotic, because that's what you want, and it was. I was really impressed by that. I've gotten to know Joe Gillespie, the new defensive coordinator, pretty well over the last, I guess, really month. His son plays baseball with my boys out in Lido, and they love him. And so I've gotten to know Joe, and I actually got to call Tulsa's bowl game this past year.
That's right. Yeah.
I think it was the Myrtle Beach Bowl. And so I got to see that defense live and in person. And I'll be honest with you, Melissa, I'm looking at that defense and going, that's the way we used to play defense. And I mean, it was just guys flying all over the place, and, you know, just real aggressive. And so I'm really looking forward to that. But I'm also looking forward to seeing Sonny Dykes offense on campus. I mean, my gosh, you know, that's, how could you not be excited? And then the other thing is looking at these guys and how much weight they've put on, and how good they look. You know, I can't say enough about what the strength program and nutrition and all the things that they're doing. You know, one of the things I think that happens when you're at a program as long as that staff was, you kind of get, I don't know, you just get set in your ways. And so in some ways we were still in the dark ages with some of the things that we were doing. And so, you know, it's a fresh approach, and I think every Frog fan should be excited about it. It's going to be a fun team to watch.
What do you think is success for Sonny Dykes in year one at the helm at TCU?
That's a really good question. I did
Only
not
the hard-hitting questions here.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. You know, just off the cuff, I would say that they need to be competing for the Big 12 championship. I think that's success. I think that's the standard. And you know, we've seen around campus that you can do a quick turnaround like that if you get enough buy-in from the guys that you need. And keep in mind, I mean, a lot of that is going to be, can we stay injury free? Because that is really what's killed the Frogs over the last few seasons. I mean, it's just been a freaking, you know, hospital wing on the sidelines. And you talk about hard. I'm not allowed to talk about injuries. And I'm sitting there going, okay, well, how many upper body injuries or lower body injuries can we have before people are like, hey, you know, what's going on out here? So, you know, that's going to be the thing that I think, can the Frogs stay healthy? If they can, then I think they're 1s and 2s. I think they've got the personnel to do it. It'll be interesting to see who plays quarterback, obviously. And I think there may be some surprises left there, so we'll see. But yeah, I would say it has to be every year. It has to be competing for the Big 12 championship. Period. That's it.
All right, you mentioned quarterbacks. I'm going to put you on. I'm going to put you on the spot a couple more times here. You've got Max Duggan or the field. Who takes the first snap behind center for TCU? Well, not necessarily behind center, but in the backfield for TCU against Colorado State.
So Colorado. My wife would kill me if I didn't say Max Duggan. She has a huge crush on Max Duggan. So I mean, legitimately, for her birthday, we were eating Mexican food, and Max was at the same restaurant, and she got starry-eyed. I was like, okay, yeah, we can get a picture, sure. It's a big hunky looking dude. So she would say that. I would tell you that it's going to depend on who the most accurate passer is. Sonny's going to be adamant about a guy being able to deliver the football quickly. That's one of the things that you'll see at practice when you get out there is they are like, get the ball out. And so who can do that and who can do it with a lot of accuracy? Chandler Morris, I got to tell you, looks really, really good in practice. It's going to be a hell of a battle. Man, Melissa, I don't know. That's a tough one. God, I don't know if I want to answer that. That's some hard-hitting journalism. I would probably say Chandler Morris.
Chandler Morris was your guy. Yeah. I mean, I think obviously a lot can change between now and September 2nd or 3rd or whatever it is. But yeah, he seems to be, like you said, accuracy seems to be the key word, and he's looked pretty good so far. Any other players that you've kind of seen, maybe one guy on offense, one guy on defense that you think has a chance to in a new system has a chance to really shine?
Yeah. I think D Winters looks really good right now at practice. I have high hopes for him. Obviously, I'm a huge Trey Tomlinson fan. I think he sets the tone for that whole defense. And so I expect him to have a big year. He's wanting to get drafted, and so I expect him to really show out. I think Kendra Miller is going to be a big component to all of this too. At the end of the day, as much as we say, hey, we got to throw the ball, Kendra Miller is going to be a big part of running the football, and I expect a lot of good from him too. So I want to see better offensive line play. I want to see us stay healthy. Those two things I think are really going to determine how good we really are at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Before I let you go, we brought up your boys earlier. You played Division I college football. I look at you just light up immediately when I even mentioned their name, mentioned them. You've got two boys that are, exceptional baseball players, high level baseball players, great runners and track, great sprinters. How difficult is that as somebody who played at the highest level, someone who's been around major Division I athletics to watch your boys, I'm assuming wanting to pursue that same dream? And how do you balance that as a father, but as someone also who, knows what it takes to get to that level?
It's been a lot of fun, to be honest with you. They and my daughter too. My daughter's going to University of Arkansas next year, and she's a high achiever, and I'm
That's
just
awesome.
Super proud of her and the way that she's lived her life. And but the boys,
I don't want to leave out the daughter. No, definitely.
No, it's all good.
You got to celebrate her too.
We don't have a lot of theater or dance fans on this call probably. So the boys, my thing with them has always been to allow them to fail. And especially with the sport that they're pursuing, baseball, they it's a game of failure. And so I try not to step in on that, but I also, I told them early on that if that's the game that they want to pursue, it's also a skill game. And so there's development that has to take place, and that's through work. And so from the time they were really little, I just told them, if you guys want to go hit, I don't care what time of day it is. If you ask, I'll take you. And I can't every night pretty much I get home and they're standing there with the bats, and so that's our thing. That's what we get to do together. So as a father, that's my time with them, and life lessons that we learn during those times. It's invaluable. So I don't focus on the end goal. Neither one of them are going to be just huge kids. One of them is probably going to stop at 5'10". The other one may get to 6 foot. I hope that'd be a Burdine record. But it's like I tell guys all the time, they just want a chance, and they'll have to earn their way into that chance. But between that and track and all the things that we're doing, and football may not be out of the picture for them down the road. My one son that played this year had an injury that he missed the whole season. So he was kind of like, yeah, I'm good. I think I'll just stick with baseball and football. But I appreciate you asking. They're they're good kids. I'm really proud of how they lead in their school and the comments that I get back from their coaches and principals and those kinds of things. That's what I'm really more focused on. I kind of figure the rest of it, as long as they're willing to work, will take care of itself. So, you know, I tell them, hey, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And they've had that in their lockers since they were 5 years old. So that's about the only thing I can tell them. And, but yeah, they're a lot of fun. So they have enjoyed kind of growing up around the program. And, I was kind of surprised when they didn't really pursue football because that's all they'd ever known.
Yeah.
But, you know, you got two little dudes and all they've ever done is throw the ball as hard as they can to each other since they were about one. You know, we're real fortunate and real blessed to have them, and I'm real proud of them. So we'll see. Maybe one day they'll get to wear the purple pinstripes. That would be, I would cry. I would just tell you, I would cry. But, you know, that's not the goal. The goal is just to have a great high school experience. And, you know, if somebody wants them, then they will have earned it at that point. So.
How much time do you spend buttering up Kirk, you know, over at the baseball stadium? Just,
you know, I
honestly,
I try not to at all. I've never wanted to be that guy. They got to see one of my sons at a showcase deal this summer, and he played well and really did well, and we just kind of left it at that. And they were like, "Hey, he's a good little player," you know, and that's enough for me. They don't need me in their ear, you know. I like jacking with those guys, Kirk and Kyle and John DeLaura and Cooper Shoulders. I mean, all those guys are just great dudes, and they don't need me doing that. They don't need me mentioning my sons to them, and I don't. You know, I'll text them like I was texting Wink this morning about not jumping into the fight with Mo and Sarlos over the weekend. You know, like, hey man, that was your chance. And so that's what I try to communicate with those guys, because to be honest with you, we can't talk about my sons for another year and a half anyway.
That's true,
you know,
yeah.
so
yeah.
it's just, I don't want to be that guy. And if they ever want to reach out or however that works, I'm not even sure what the rules are, then I'm sure they'll do that at some point. So,
hey, I think Kirk could handle himself against Bill Winters. I would have been more worried if I was Bill.
Hey, let me tell you something. He should, I would have been totally fine if he got tossed. It was totally warranted, and that was garbage this weekend. We could talk about that all day. Winters picked a fight with him at the pregame plate meeting on Saturday. I couldn't believe it. Yeah. We were out there watching that too. So I'm proud of Kirk. He's doing a good job, and his whole staff is just awesome. It's a great time to be a frog on campus. It's a whole different feeling right now, isn't it?
It seems like the vibe in baseball is similar to the vibe in football now, and just that change. And it's just interesting when you've had things, like you said earlier, done such a certain way and so rote, you know, for almost 2 decades at both of those programs, to what that fresh blood and that infusion of youth and energy can do for a program. And it's nothing against the guys that were there before, but you know, change is inevitable, right? Everybody goes through it, and sometimes it can be a good thing too. So, Landry, right. I know you've got an important lunch meeting to get to, because you're that kind of guy just with important lunch meetings. So I really appreciate your time. Awesome to have you on, and to kind of give us a peek behind the microphone. And I know personally, I'm really looking forward to sharing the sideline again with you in September when we head to Colorado.
It's Melissa, you're the best. I love you, and thank you for the time. I appreciate you having me on, and I will see you in Boulder. That'll be fun.
Can't wait.